There is a belief most men never question, and it silently destroys their attraction before a single word is spoken. They believe desire is something you create by doing more, talking more, explaining more, proving more, trying harder. But the truth is darker and far less comfortable. The more a man tries to generate attraction, the more his body exposes the absence of it. Some men enter a room and disappear, even while speaking, gesturing, filling space with sound and effort. Others do almost nothing. They don't compete for attention, they don't explain themselves, they don't ask to be seen, and yet eyes follow them. Curiosity bends toward them. Proximity happens naturally. The difference is not personality, it is not technique, it is not confidence acting, it is state. Sexual magnetism is not an external action. It is an internal field that exists before movement, before speech, before intention becomes visible. It shifts perception around you without effort, without announcement, without permission. This is why so many men fail without understanding why. They focus on what to say, how to behave, how to impress, while their body is already communicating something else entirely. Shortened breath, searching eyes, restless posture, a rhythm that asks instead of holds. The body always speaks first, and it never lies. Robert Greene described magnetism as the ability to alter the emotional state of others without visible force. Not persuasion, not convincing, displacement. When a man enters a space with his internal axis organized, the environment adjusts to him. He does not raise his voice, he does not perform confidence, he does not announce presence. Presence happens to the room. Female desire responds to this because the unconscious recognizes signals of control, direction, and internal authority long before the rational mind tries to explain attraction. The mistake of the average man is believing attraction is born from technique. He memorizes lines, trains social behaviors, attempts to appear interesting, but the more he tries to manufacture magnetism, the more his body leaks anxiety. Energy disperses, the breath becomes shallow, the gaze seeks confirmation. The rhythm accelerates, and the feminine nervous system reads this misalignment as noise. Desire does not grow in noisy environments. It grows where there is center, direction, and internal silence. Look carefully at the pattern. Some men chase, adapt, insist, and are still dismissed. Others maintain posture, pace, and emotional sovereignty, and women approach them. Not because those men are better, but because they emit unconscious signals of emotional stability and internal leadership. Female desire does not respond to excessive availability. It responds to organized presence, the feeling that this man is not trying to occupy space because he already belongs to it. This video is not going to teach you how to chase anything. It will show you how to build magnetism internally, so attraction moves toward you, not as a favor, not as coincidence, but as a natural response to a well-defined internal state. When you stop seeking desire and start sustaining presence, the dynamic reverses. You stop orbiting, you become the gravitational center, and from that point on, everything changes. Let me ask you something, and don't answer this intellectually. At what moments have you felt that women lost interest without anything obvious happening, even though you said the right things and behaved correctly? That question matters more than it seems. Because magnetism begins exactly where most men lose control, in the impulse to react, in the reflex to explain, in the urgency to respond. Women feel intense attraction toward emotionally stable men who are difficult to destabilize, not because those men are cold, but because stability communicates something words never reach. Internal power. Not power over others, power over oneself. When a man maintains his axis under tension, his body registers safety before the mind forms judgment. Psychology confirms this with uncomfortable clarity. Studies on emotional regulation conducted by the University of California showed that self-control increases perceived status and attractiveness, not because the man appears distant, but because he appears whole. The feminine mind associates emotional stability with the capacity to lead. If he doesn't lose control when tested, delayed, contradicted, or provoked, the unconscious concludes something silently. He likely won't lose control when real pressure arrives. This evaluation happens automatically, instinctively, without dialogue. And here lies the misunderstanding that confuses most men. Emotional containment is not emotional coldness. It is not silence out of resentment. It is not fake indifference. It is zero internal predictability. Externally, you may appear calm. Internally, you choose when and how to respond. The magnetic man does not surrender his energy to the first stimulus. He creates an interval, a pause, a space. That space reorganizes the dynamic. This interval is where fascination is born. Observe men who generate tension effortlessly. They do not respond immediately. They do not justify themselves unnecessarily. They do not explain to relieve their own discomfort. That absence of immediate reaction creates a psychological vacuum, and the feminine mind experiences it as intensity. Not because he did something, but because he did not. His silence forces the environment to adjust. Attention bends toward him. Curiosity increases. Desire begins to move. Practically, this pillar demands emotional discipline, pausing before responding, especially when emotion rises, eliminating automatic emotional justifications, maintaining neutrality during tests, irony, or mood shifts, not to play games, but to retain authorship over your internal state. When this becomes consistent, perception changes. You stop being emotionally predictable. You become a stable point inside chaos. And to the feminine nervous system, stability under pressure is not merely attractive, it is magnetic. At some point in the interaction, tension changes nature. It stops being curiosity and becomes orientation-seeking. Women are magnetized to men who define rhythm because direction reduces anxiety. When no one leads, the environment becomes loud. The mind accelerates. The body closes. When someone holds the axis, the nervous system relaxes, not out of submission, but relief. Magnetism is born exactly there. Behavioral science explains why this works. Research from Harvard Business School shows that perceived leadership activates trust and desire, even when leadership is silent. It is not about commanding. It is about organizing the field. The man who decides calmly, who chooses direction without asking for validation, communicates something rare, internal clarity. And clarity is scarce. Where there is clarity, the body relaxes. Where the body relaxes, attraction has space to grow. Most men confuse direction with control. That mistake kills magnetism. Control pressures, clarity sustains. The magnetic man does not accelerate to prove authority, nor hesitate to avoid conflict. He defines rhythm because he is comfortable with consequence. He chooses. He transitions. He moves when the moment shifts. He does not announce. He does not negotiate emotionally. Action done calmly speaks louder than explanation ever could. Decision-making studies published in the Journal of Social Psychology found that clear masculine decisions increase female attraction because they reduce emotional uncertainty. Uncertainty drains. Clarity calms. The man who leads does not need dominance in tone. He dominates cadence. While others over-question, he advances when timing is right. While others wait endlessly for signals, he reads the environment and moves. That fine calibration creates the sensation that he knows where he stands. Applying this pillar requires presence, deciding calmly, guiding without asking permission, leading transitions without dramatizing. When choice appears, choose. When the moment shifts, move. The man who does this doesn't convince others to follow. He follows himself, and those around him feel the pull to accompany, because following someone who knows where he's going feels safer than leading someone who doesn't. This is where many men understand the concept, but fail to sustain the state. They lack internal structure. They lack a system that transforms clarity into habit, and that absence shows under pressure. That is exactly why structured methods exist, not to add tricks, but to reorganize internal leadership into something repeatable. When direction comes from within, magnetism stops being effort and becomes consequence. And we haven't even touched the deepest layer yet. There is a silent moment where attraction is decided long before logic enters the room. It happens beneath language, beneath intention, beneath strategy. The body chooses first. This is where most men unknowingly sabotage themselves. They try to compensate verbally for what their body fails to hold. They speak faster, they gesture more, they invade space, they chase reactions. Without realizing it, they scatter energy. And scattered energy does not create tension, it dissolves it. Neuroscience has already mapped this terrain. Studies conducted at Princeton University showed that emotional judgments are formed within seconds of exposure, before conscious reasoning activates. That means that when you start speaking, much of how you are perceived is already decided. If your body communicates urgency, anxiety, or the need for approval, no sentence will override that signal. Presence is what organizes that first reading. Presence is what sustains impact. And here is the rupture most men resist. Speaking less increases influence, not because silence is mystical, but because silence concentrates energy. The man who moves slowly, who does not adjust his body to every stimulus, who maintains eye contact without pressure, creates a natural field of tension. This is not intimidation, it is density. His body appears comfortable in its own space, and comfort within oneself is one of the clearest signals of perceived dominance. Observe social reality without romanticism. Men who walk without haste, occupy space naturally, and hold steady eye contact are perceived as more dominant even when they say very little. This is not rehearsed posture. It is economy of movement. Every gesture carries intention. Every pause has weight. While others try to be noticed, this man allows the environment to adapt to him. Attention moves toward axis. Always. The practical application of this pillar begins with reducing unnecessary gestures, reducing anxious modulation of voice, reducing the impulse to fill silence. When you slow your body, the environment slows with you. When you hold eye contact without seeking return, tension forms. When you control your own timing, you communicate that you are not competing with anything. And that absence of urgency is felt as power. Masculine presence is not theatrical intensity. It is silent depth. It is being fully in the body, fully in the moment, fully in the space. When this state is present, a woman does not feel the need to defend herself from your energy or fight for your attention. She feels invited. And when she enters that field, desire does not emerge as chaos, it emerges as continuity. The man who masters this does not hunt interest. He becomes the point where interest stabilizes. This is where everything converges. When you stop chasing desire, it starts following. There is a moment when a man understands something that changes him, not as a concept, but as a state. Desire was never something to be pursued. It was always a response, a natural reaction to a man who does not need to prove value, convince, or explain himself. When observed coldly, all magnetism comes from the same place, internal dominance, not dominance over others, dominance over self, over rhythm, over emotion, over reaction. Friedrich Nietzsche spoke of power as something that begins inwardly, the capacity to sustain one's will without fragmenting under the weight of the world. That translates directly into attraction. The man who does not break emotionally, who does not rush to be accepted, who does not dissolve himself trying to please, creates a silent force around him. He does not impose presence, he emanates it. And what emanates does not need to be announced. Sexual magnetism is born when a man stops competing for attention and starts organizing space around himself. Women do not chase men who try to impress, because trying carries effort, tension, and fear of failure. They move toward men who hold presence and direction because that communicates safety. And emotional safety is the ground where desire grows without resistance, not through logic, through instinct, through bodily sensation that precedes explanation. The three pillars you've absorbed here do not work in isolation. Emotional containment, masculine direction, embodied presence. Together, they form a unified internal state. When that state exists, interactions change without negotiation. Conversations flow differently. Eye contact responds differently. Dynamics invert, not because you did more, but because you stopped doing what weakened you. You stopped reacting. You stopped chasing. You stopped seeking validation. That is why tricks were never enough. Tricks attempt to simulate a state that does not yet exist. What actually works is building that state, consciously, trainably, repeatably. That is the difference between momentary inspiration and structural transformation. Some men will watch this and agree with everything, then return to the same patterns in the next interaction. Others will understand something deeper. Magnetism is not motivation. It is identity. The path exists for those who decide to stop seeking desire and start becoming inevitable. From here on, it is no longer about knowing. It is about sustaining who you choose to be. And once that decision is internalized, attraction no longer needs to be forced. It happens.